What's up, everybody? Matthew Fisher back again for another movie review. It's the one everyone's been waiting for, especially if you're a huge Star Wars fan like I am. Star Wars: The Last Jedi came out this past weekend. I've seen it 2 times now, and I've really had to collect my thoughts on it. It's a very dense movie. It's the longest movie in the whole franchise, so there's really a lot to unpack in this movie. But if you haven't watched my videos before, what I do is I categorize film into 5 categories, which are plot, writing, cinematography, acting, and pace. And I give those a score out of 10, and it gives me, after I calculate all that, it gives me a score out of 5 and a score out of 10. So let's go ahead and get started with the plot of this movie. This movie has probably the most original plot of any Star Wars film. It's really interesting and very unexpected. I'll do spoilers later on in the video, by the way. I'm not going to spoil anything in case whoever watches this hasn't seen the movie. I'm just going to speak in kind of broad terms and not spoil anything. But the plot of this movie is very interesting. There are problems with it given how original the plot is. There are people that don't tell other people who are on the same side certain things, which lead to plot lines that really weren't necessary if everyone would have just had better communication. There are also weird reasons for people to pilot ships. I'll just say that. Another thing with communication, a lot of people don't tell other people on the same side what's going on, and I guess you could say that's a theme of this movie, is how a lack of communication can lead to bad things, because it certainly does in this film. There are situations where characters get out of situations far too easily, and makes you wonder why they were in the situation in the first place. There are storylines that are presented. There's one specific one that's presented in the trailer that you get in the movie, but it's kind of dropped and it's not really carried at all for the rest of the movie. You thought it would be a pretty big storyline, but it's not. It's really kind of a shame because it's kind of a big deal. But let's see. There are also characters that show up unexpectedly and without explanation, and then they go away and they're gone again. But that was a very weird thing. I'll get into it later. There's characters doing things that they really shouldn't, given their past and how it could compromise a mission given their face. I'll say that. Going back to the one I said before that last one, characters show up and it's not explained how or why. There are characters that know other characters that you didn't know they knew them. Now, this one in particular, I can kind of give a pass because it's known that this character knows many people, but in the films, it's not presented that certain characters know certain characters. Again, given the plot of this movie, it's very interesting, the plot, but there are things happening as far as contact that makes you wonder, well, if that can happen, why didn't you do this to solve the conundrum that you're in? That's definitely a lot. That's all I have for the plot, and it sounds like a lot, but when you see this movie, these things kind of go underneath the surface until the movie's over and you think about it. But given how interesting this plot is, Unfortunately, I still have to knock some points off of it because of all of these plot holes. I don't know if they're necessarily plot holes or if they're just, I'm going to call them plot holes. I can't think of anything else to call them. But given all these things, I'm going to have to give the plot a 7 out of 10. Now, I still recommend seeing the movie. The plot is, like I said, very interesting, but it's not fully executed as well as it could have been. But I'm going to give the plot a 7 out of 10. The next category is the writing of the movie. Now, I found the writing, as far as dialogue, to be pretty good. But as far as like situations that, especially in space, where you'll have space will do what you expect it to in terms of, you know, if you were to crack open a window, what would happen? You would get sucked out. But this movie does a bad job of following the rules of space. And I know people have always gotten on Star Wars for that, but it's the most apparent in this movie how it kind of just ignores the rules of space when it wants to, but then when they want to follow the rules of space for the necessity of story, then they will. So they're not being very consistent with space, which, yeah, this is the most apparent that's ever been in a Star Wars movie. And that's really unfortunate because when you think about it and how they're not being consistent, it's like very obvious. Let's see, there's a lot of humor in this movie. I'd say about 50% works because the timing is off. Not comedic timing, but the timing in the movie where it's placed is very odd, and I've never seen it. Like there's comedy dropped close to or in the third act of this film, and when you see this film, the third act is really, the whole movie is very serious, but they just kind of just drop humor in random places throughout the movie, and it just doesn't feel right at all. There's a specific comedic moment between two characters that when it happens, you think to yourself, there should be no comedic moment between these two characters at all. There are things that characters know of other characters that make you stop and think of how they know that, and it stops you from being able to watch and enjoy the movie because you're thinking of how this character knows this thing. Now, as far as the dialogue, there were Star Wars problems as far as dialogue we had never heard in a Star Wars movie. I think it's fair to add that, considering what this universe is already set up and how we've never heard certain words said before. But then again, it has been in the story 30 years since episode 6. So I don't know. Again, I'll get into specifics on what those words are in a little bit. There are characters that we never see react to other characters' situations. It's kind of just edited over, and that's kind of disappointing. Again, there are characters that show up for a little bit, but then they disappear when they should be around. I didn't know if that should be a plot thing or a writing thing. I threw it in the writing section because this certain thing doesn't have to do with the plot of the movie, but it is strange how this certain character appears and then just is gone, even though they should be around in the third act. There are situations where protagonists are fine and antagonists are not, even though they all should have been hurt. If you, I guess, if you know what I mean. I guess explosion-wise, some people were fine. That really shouldn't have been. That's all I have for the writing. I'm going to give the writing an 8 out of 10 because the dialogue, other than those weird little things, Star Wars things, was pretty good. The inconsistency with space does bother me, but none of this stuff was bad enough for me to drop it below an 8. The next category, cinematography. Rian Johnson directs this movie, and he directs a beautiful movie. It is the shots he uses. It's hard, really, for a Star Wars movie to not have absolutely fabulous cinematography. I mean, even the first 3 Star Wars films that a lot of Star Wars fans don't really like, they'll even admit that the cinematography is fantastic, because it is. Those first 3 movies are absolutely beautiful, but this one is beautiful as well. But yeah, I'm gonna give the cinematography a 10 out of 10. Very, very well done by Rian Johnson. The next category is acting. The acting in this movie is spectacular. It really is. There's only one moment in this movie, and I saw it the first time I saw the movie, and it caught my attention, was Daisy Ridley. And I really like her. I love her as Rey. She seems like a very good person and a very good actress. There's one scene in this movie where it just felt like, I don't know if it was just the delivery she was giving. Maybe she thought that it should sound this certain way, but to me it sounded like she was, and I don't think this is what she was doing, don't get me wrong, but it sounded like she was like reading her lines off a card. When it was just weird. It was because the rest of the movie and before this moment, she's great. It's just this one moment, it just sounds like she's just reading it off of a cue card, and it was just weird. That's all I have for the acting as far as negative. Now, Adam Driver to me, and oh my God, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher is so much better. She wasn't bad in Force Awakens, but she's so Princess Leia in this, General Leia in this movie. She just taps right back into it. It's crazy. But Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and certainly Adam Driver for me steal the show acting-wise. Daisy Ridley is good. Her character, unfortunately, isn't really given a lot for her to do emotionally. The film seems more, when you're done watching it, this is for me personally, it felt more of Kylo's story than it did Rey's, which was strange and off-putting. But yeah, I've never seen a movie where the protagonist felt less important than the antagonist. But that was certainly interesting. But I'm gonna give the acting a 9 out of 10 just for that one moment with Daisy Ridley there. The fifth and final category is the pace. The first time I watched it, I've heard many people say that they felt as though there was like a lull in the middle of the movie, and I certainly felt that the first time I watched it. It's because of a storyline that there's a lot of debate over right now, whether it should have been in the movie at all, if it introduces new lore for the future. But the second time I watched it, it really didn't bother me as much. I mean, obviously, because I knew what was coming. The pace felt better, but I can't ignore that lull I felt the first time I watched it, because it's not necessarily the middle of the movie, and it's not the beginning, but it's like in between that section, those two sections, where you feel this lull and you're kind of just waiting for this movie to kind of get rolling in a way. But I'm going to give the pace a 9 out of 10. To go back through these real quick, plot is a 7, writing is an 8, cinematography is a 10, acting is a 9, pace is a 9. That gives me a score of a 4.3 out of 5 and an 8.6 out of 10. I highly recommend seeing this movie. It's a really good time. The 2.5 hours goes by pretty fast, other than that little lull I mentioned. But you might not sense that lull that I sensed. Some people didn't, but I'm hearing from others that they did. So, like I said, highly recommended. Um, very well written, very well acted, obviously well directed. Some misplaced humor, very unnecessary humor. Almost felt like it was inputted later because the movie was too dark or something. The humor in this movie kind of holds the movie back from being as great as it could have been. Yeah, and this movie, you look at it and you're like, man, that thing could have really been something. It still is it's certainly for me, in my top 3 favorite Star Wars movies. But this certainly could have rivaled Empire as the best Star Wars movie if it didn't make these really misguided and silly mistakes that was unexpected of a director like Rian Johnson, who's had a lot of praise. He hasn't had a lot of work. He's only made, this might be his, I think at the most, 5th film. I know of 2 other films that I've seen of his, but he hasn't made too many films. But he's certainly made a very good Star Wars film, in my opinion. So I highly recommend this. I'm going to go ahead and get into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the movie, go ahead and stop watching now. Come back after you see the movie, and then continue this video. But I'm going to go ahead and explain in specific detail my problem with these 5 categories in The Last Jedi. So spoilers going forward. That's your final warning. The plot. Okay, so the plot of this movie is that they are literally running the whole time from the First Order and their ships, because if they hyperspace jump one more time, they'll be out of fuel and they'll all die. So the problem with this plan is that the person in charge after Leia is injured doesn't tell the crew what their plan is. Now, after watching it twice, it's clear that she's not the only one that knows the plan. Her and maybe 4 other people do. My thing is, I don't understand why you wouldn't let everyone know what your plan is, unless you're scared of it somehow getting back to the First Order, which would imply that you think there may be a double agent among you, but that's never mentioned. That would have been a really cool storyline had they done that, if they're running from the First Order and meanwhile they think there's a double agent among them. That really would have been cool. But unfortunately, there's really no reason I can think of for Holdo to not tell everyone what they're going to do. That would, it would calm everyone down if they knew that they were going to a new planet and everything. But no, everyone's just kind of kept on the down low. Yeah, that to me was probably the biggest plot hole in this movie. Well, no, not the biggest one. There's another one in a little bit I'm going to get to. They have to leave ships behind because they're running out of fuel. But for some reason, they have to leave a pilot behind with the ship. And they never explained why. Why couldn't they just evacuate the entire ship and just leave it floating there to be destroyed? Why do you have to leave someone behind in the cockpit? If y'all have any answers to these questions, please leave it in the comment section, because I want to know. I want this movie to be as great as it can be, but I have to try to be objective. And these are some serious problems I found. Okay, another thing. Luke tells Rey that he's going to teach her 3 lessons, and we only see 2. There are assumptions that the 3rd lesson was him teaching her to fight, which is extremely necessary. I don't understand why they would cut it. And that's what I have here, is that why didn't we see Luke train Rey to fight with her lightsaber? We see what we see in the trailer with her spinning the lightsaber around at that rock. But Luke is just watching. We never see him guide her in any way with how to use a lightsaber. He's just watching her. I don't know. And then at the end of the movie, it's as good as that scene is with her and Kylo in the throne room, you know, you can't help but think, like, how is Rey doing? How is Rey fighting people? How is she doing it? I was hoping, because that was a big problem that a lot of people had, including myself with the first one, is that she just knows how to fight. Just does. And I was hoping, okay, well, now she's actually going to learn how to fight from Luke, but that doesn't happen. And then she just continues to fight anyway. So I don't know. I don't understand that at all, really. At the end of the film, when Luke is going to distract Kylo, why didn't he tell anyone that that's what he's doing? He went out there and, you know, everyone watched him until Poe had to figure out what he was doing. Why didn't Luke just say, hey, y'all get out of here, I'm going to go distract them? He just walks out there and just waits for them to figure it out. That also bothered me. DJ is the person that Finn and Rose find in the prison cell, and he's sleeping. He wakes up and then, like, uses some kind of key card to open the door, and it's like, if you could get out any time you wanted to, why are you in there? I don't understand. I don't know, that was just weird. That whole storyline was weird and just strangely done. I don't know. This one to me is very surprising. So you have that big moment in the trailer where you're not sure if Kylo is going to shoot at his mother or not. It's very well executed in the movie as far as him deciding not to, but it happens anyway. But after that, he thinks his mother's dead, right? We all know that she's not. She comes back. The rest of the movie, I don't think Kylo ever finds out that she's really alive. And we never see him mention his mother's death or a reaction to it. We see him react in the cockpit when it happens, but after that, it's just him talking to Rey, and it's never brought up. So I guess in episode 9, when we pick back up with Kylo, he's going to continue thinking that his mother is dead. I don't know. That storyline is just dropped. Oh God, Phasma. So Phasma shows up with no explanation of how she survived the first movie. Nothing. She just shows up, she fights, and then she dies. And so we're back to square one with Phasma. I just don't understand why you're going to bring her back just to immediately kill her. Why not leave her around for that segment on Crate, and then even leave her around longer to be in episode 9? I mean, you have Gwendolyn Christie. Now, maybe she survived the fire. Her armor couldn't be penetrated by laser fire. Maybe she's protected by it and all that fire. But really, if you bring her back, all anyone's going to say is, why did you even drop her in the fire in the first place? It's just very strange how they're treating Gwendolyn Christie in these movies. I mean, she is, if y'all watch Game of Thrones, that's the Brienne of Tarth. And she is fabulous. She's a very good actress. And it's just kind of wasted in these Star Wars movies. And it's very unfortunate because you can only play one human Star Wars character. You only get one shot. You can't come back. And I just feel like they've wasted her. So that's unfortunate. Let's see. Okay, this is a big one too. The idea of Finn sneaking on a First Order ship and showing his face is really stupid. It's really dumb. I mean, this movie takes place immediately after the first one. So when he's sneaking on this ship, it's been like 24 hours since the First Order was looking for him in Force Awakens. And now he's on their ship showing his face around. He's not covered it up or anything. And that never crosses Finn's mind that, I can't, y'all go on the ship, but if they see me, they'll know who I am. No, that never happens. And yeah, that's a big problem. Let's see, I already discussed Phasma. Okay, how does Poe know Maz? Now, in Force Awakens, they set it up like Maz is probably the most well-known pirate in all of the galaxy. And I can buy that Poe and Maz know each other. The problem is that it just kind of happens in this movie, and you're, oh, okay, they know each other. Which, I don't know. I mean, rewatching Force Awakens, it does mention how well known she is, but I feel like we should have gotten some mention that Poe knows her. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments if they've already mentioned that Poe does know her. And here's another big problem. So they come out of hyperspace before the First Order catches up, and they say that their mission is to get to the closest base they can find so that they can send out a distress signal to their allies in the Outer Rim. So here's the problem. If that's what they're trying to do, how is it that Poe and Finn and Rose would no problem contact Maz Kanata? You know, why couldn't they just contact Maz, who is an ally, and say, hey, we're stuck out here in space. Let our people know. Let our allies know in the Outer Rim. Send some help. No, they're actually able to contact someone, but instead of doing that, they get information about some hacker or something that they should have just told Maz. That's another big plot hole. There's 3 big plot holes in this movie, which is really sucks given how cool the plot is. Let's see, that's it for the plot. The writing. This isn't dialogue, but at the beginning of the movie, they drop those bombs on that dreadnought, and they just fall as if there was gravity. And that's a simple fix. All you got to do is show little rockets on these bombs that are pushing them down. But no, they just fall. And again, with that, the bay doors open on the ship. It doesn't seem to me that there was any kind of laser field or whatever that there normally is. If a door is open in space, there's a laser field to contain the gravity and atmosphere within the ship and all that. But no, it doesn't look like it. I mean, it looks like she's just hanging out there. And you know she should be sucked right out if that's the case. But, you know, and it, like that's the thing. It's not consistent because later you see Leia get sucked out into space. So they're not being very consistent in space. And it's not inconsistency with like sound in space. That stuff is, to me, is so minor. But when you show someone hanging out over space and they're fine, but then 15 minutes later you see someone get sucked out, it's very inconsistent. There's a very odd humorous moment between Rey and Kylo where she asked him to put a shirt on, and I found this to be very bad humor considering who these 2 characters are and their relationship. Like, that was very odd. I mean, maybe if that was between her and Finn or her and Poe, but her and Kylo, that was weird. Okay, how does Rey know Luke saved his father? Is this well-known knowledge throughout the universe in these 30 years since Return of the Jedi? Does everyone know that Luke turned Vader back to the light? If that's the case, does Ben Solo know that? Like, who all knows that? Because Rey drops that knowledge like she's known forever. And I didn't know she knew that he did that. I don't know. Again, correct me in the comments if I missed that. Maybe I need to rewatch Force Awakens. Okay, so here's some actual dialogue I had a problem with. At the end of the movie, Poe says, big ass door. And I don't think we've ever heard that kind of speech before in Star Wars. It didn't bother me that much because, you know, people say, oh, you're a hell of a pilot. And it didn't bother me. It did catch my attention. The 2 things that did bother me were the 2 times we heard a character say, Godspeed Rebels. Because the word God has never been said in Star Wars, because to me the Force has always been the representation of God on our Earth, you know, because Star Wars is very representative of many of Earth's cultures. That I always assumed Force was representative of God from our culture, but I mean, I guess it could be the case that there are different religions in Star Wars. Some people believe in the Force, some people believe in a God. I don't know, but it was very odd hearing people say Godspeed Rebels. That was very weird. It took me out of the movie completely for that moment. Yeah, I didn't like that. Um, we never get to see Luke react to Han's death, and that to me, because Luke says, "Where's Han?" And then we cut to Kylo. We have a scene with him, and then we cut back to Luke and Rey, and it's after Rey's explained everything. And yeah, Luke is laying there, and he doesn't look. I mean, he never looks happy in this movie, but they just kind of don't show it. They don't worry about it. I don't know. I didn't like that. Everybody kind of wanted to see Luke's reaction, and I don't need to see him crying and boo-hooing over Han, and I just need to see something. But we didn't. We literally just cut away from it and cut back after she's told him. I don't know. It's just we never really get to see a reaction at all, and that kind of sucks. So R2 pops up in a really cool scene, and I love this scene because of all people, it is R2-D2 that inspires Luke to train Rey. He shows him that video of Leia from Episode 4, which basically, he's telling him, we've been down and out before. We've been in bad positions. We've had friends that needed our help, and you were there. It's time for you to be there again. And I really, really, really like that. But unfortunately, R2 doesn't show up again for the whole movie. Even though the Millennium Falcon is flying around Crate and all that, we just never see R2 again. I mean, he might be in that very, very final shot with everyone, but he's never doing anything else, even though we're with the Millennium Falcon and he's in the Millennium Falcon. We just never see him again. After Holdo goes through hyperspace into the ship, which is really cool and I've never thought about before, there's this really kind of dumb moment where we go back inside the ship and Finn and Rose are fine, but every stormtrooper around them that was about to kill them is down and out. Now, I guess you could say that right before the ship went through the other ship, Finn and Rose were already on the ground, about to be executed. So I guess you could say that since they were on the ground, the explosion hurt people standing up more than the people that were already on the ground, I guess. I don't know. It just looks silly when we go back to them and they're fine, but everybody else around them is dead or passed out. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, at the end, it was very, very strangely edited when Finn drags Rose all the way back to the Resistance base. Because of the way it's edited, you have to assume that Finn was dragging Rose past Luke Skywalker as he's standing out there. Because it's after Luke walks out there that Finn and Rose come in. I don't know. I just thought that should have been done sooner. That was weird. Another bad humor moment is when there's this cut to what looks to be a ship landing, and it turns out to be an iron. And I thought that was so stupid, especially considering it happens, if not in the third act, like right close to the third act of the movie. It was just silly and just unnecessary. And, you're trying to enjoy the themes of this movie and how serious it is. And the movie just keeps wanting to, remind you that, hey, don't forget, it's Star Wars and we're having fun. And there are times and places in Star Wars movies to remind us that we're having fun. And it's not that time. You don't do it then. So I really didn't. And that's an easy fix. That's what bothered me so much. Is that was so unnecessary. But it's in there. Okay. So going back to Finn and Rose about to be executed, Phasma is standing right there right there with them. But after the crash and Finn and Rose wake up, they get up and they walk, and now Phasma is coming out of a door on the other side of the room. She went from being right where Finn and Rose are when that explosion happened to being on the other side of the room coming through a door with a gun. And I don't understand that. There's many weird editing. The third act of this movie is awesome, but there's weird editing in the third act, and that's probably where the worst editing is in the third act of this movie, because people are disappearing and then reappearing, and I think I'm about to do another one here. Yeah, okay, so Rey and Kylo fight off the Praetorian guards, and then they fight over Anakin's lightsaber before it splits in half, and they're thrown backwards. Okay, that's the last time you see Rey for literally, and I mean literally, for 10 minutes. You see her and Kylo fighting over this lightsaber. It splits in half. They bounce back, and then you don't see her for another 10 minutes until she shows up on the Millennium Falcon with Chewie, helping them on Crate, leading the TIE fighters away. And I remember when this happened, the first time I saw the movie, it's yet another moment in this movie where you're trying to watch the movie, but at the same time think of things. Because Rey pops up and you're like, wait, when was the last time I saw her? Wasn't she on that ship? How did she get here? What happened? It's been a while. And I promise you, it's 10 minutes. As crazy as that sounds, what movies do you see where the protagonist is missing for 10 minutes in the third act? None. I mean, that's weird. They said the first cut of this movie was 3 hours, and it looks to me like they definitely cut some stuff out of the third act, and in my opinion, it hurt the movie. And the acting. This is the last thing I have here. It's when Daisy Ridley is Rey is telling Luke. It's right before she sits down on that rock. She says, "Master Skywalker, Kylo Ren is getting stronger, and if we don't hurry." She says it, but it sounds like she's reading it off a cue card. It's so weird. I have to watch it again, but the first time, it's not something I noticed the second time. I noticed it immediately. It just seemed like she was reading it, just kind of ready to be done with that day's work or something. That's what it sounded like. But I don't know. Maybe just a bad delivery. All actors probably have them. But that's all I have as far as spoilers. My problems with the movie. Other than all that stuff, the movie's really fun. It introduces really, really cool ideas. There are many, many twists and turns in this movie. It's constantly doing this. I found there are decisions made by the writer-director Rian Johnson in this movie that a lot of hardcore Star Wars fans don't agree with. I consider myself a hardcore Star Wars fan, and I really liked every decision he made. Now I didn't like the execution of Leia in space. I thought it was shot funny looking. I thought maybe if you shot it differently, it would look better, as far as like not looking as, I don't want to say silly, but it looked strange. The more after watching it, it doesn't bother me as much. But I thought that could have been executed a little better. Snoke's death I loved. I think it makes Kylo a great villain. It shows how smart he is, because he outsmarted Snoke. Yeah, Snoke's talking about how, I'm more powerful. He can't betray me. It didn't come down to force power. It didn't come down to a lightsaber fight. It came down to smarts. And Kylo pulled a genius move of mimicking his actions with what he was really doing to trick Snoke and to catch him off guard. I really love that scene. It was very well shot, written, just very well done. Very well done. The musical cues were great. When Rey catches the lightsaber and he falls in half and the music starts, that moment is one of the best moments in Star Wars, no doubt. I loved watching it. I loved every bit of it. The fight following it is great. And then right after the fight, when Kylo is staring at the throne, and you know that that's what he wants. He wants the power. Very, very well done. I liked it a lot. The twist with Luke at the end, I liked that too. People say that they wanted to see all-powerful Luke and that they're disappointed that they didn't. I don't know what movie they watched. That seemed pretty powerful to me. If you're able to, when what do they call it? Astro project. I think that's what. If you're able to astro project yourself that far and for that long, yeah, you have to be pretty powerful. It was such a powerful move that it killed him. And I like that decision as well. It shocked me, and I was disappointed to see Luke leave, but him giving his life to do one of the most powerful Force tricks ever to save his friends, that's Luke Skywalker. So there are many people saying that this is not Luke Skywalker. And for much of this movie, it's not the Luke Skywalker you know, because he's depressed, he's downtrodden from his mistake that he made with Kylo. And I really like that. It's a really cool character progression. But we also see him progress back into the Luke that we all know and love, which is that hero that would do anything to save his friends. So to me, they nailed Luke Skywalker. I loved it. I really did. So yeah, this movie is certainly in my top 3 favorite. I think it goes Empire, Sith, then this one. Sith doesn't have as many problems as this movie. That's the unfortunate thing, is this this really could have rivaled Empire if it didn't have the problems it does, but it has the problems, unfortunately. But that's all I have to say about the movie. Again, my score is 4.3 out of 5, 8.6 out of 10. Highly recommend it. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you want to. Share this video. I hope you all enjoyed, and take it easy, guys.